Every organization offering digital services online inevitably integrates with other systems and applications. And opening these doorways to third parties can lead to security risks. So how does Squiz mitigate these risks?
I might start, and there's sort of two things that come to mind immediately. And the first one is how developers build integrations, or how integrations are built with the digital experience and whatever third-party applications are being used. And one of the things that we see often, but sort of don't really like that, is sort of point-to-point integrations. And point-to-point integrations between the digital experience and that system are where developers are just writing code to ultimately connect the experience together. And it puts a lot of pressure on developers to get security right at that point. They're often pulling in data, not just content, but also potentially quite personal data that's moving between these systems. And developers inevitably make mistakes. It's not a slight against developers, but the ramifications for a security mistake are quite huge, especially if you're talking to a third-party system that gets individualized data, things like customer details, names, exam results, things like that. So first thing we sort of always recommend is moving towards an integration platform as a service model, an iPaaS. And in that model, you get to centralize not just integrations, but also secrets and security credentials and things like that. So in that way, you don't have developers having to think about security as much, protect those secrets as much. They don't even need to know them, right? It's the thing that Martin tells us all the time. It's like, there's no need for developers necessarily to know what the secret is. They just need to be able to establish a connection and do what's required. And centralizing them that way allows things like, sort of key regeneration and rotation and things like that to happen, again, without changing anything for a developer. They don't have to worry about it, which is great. And the other thing, it lets us, as we build a next integration, build on all of the security that we've already built into the platform before. So you don't have to start from scratch every single time, as a developer tends to do in that point-to-point integration model. So that's the very first thing, the sort of integrations. Anything to add, Martin? Did I cover it?
Yeah, so I think adding a few more things in there. What you said is exactly what we're doing. Is things like point-to-point integrations, especially for our endpoint, the customer using our platform, developers in that space. It does remove some of the some of the pressure to do all the security things. But what we also do is, within the digital experiences platform, we make sure that things like authentication is done in a way that that our customer developers can use it in the right way. Now we look through, or make sure that some of the basic principles like authentication, authorization, and audit is in place for logging into systems, so that these mechanisms are there for them, or the ability for a customer to actually use their own identity provider, to use the digital experience platform and their solutions they build on top of it. Some other things are, obviously, there's a whole bunch of underlying infrastructure. So it's not, or solutions is not just a visual experience. There might be some APIs at the bottom, which need to be used to be able to integrate and have this capability to operate multiple systems and pull data and pull functionality from various places. Now, just because you don't see it doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't need to be secured. So APIs are there, they need to be used, but they use the same type of security, I would say, rigor we do for any solutions on the digital experience platform.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, because we talk about composable digital experience platforms a lot, and what it sort of immediately leaps to is a lot of things that need to talk to each other. And as Martin said, these are things that are visibly talking to each other, and a lot of invisible connections that are also created that you might not actually see, but it's just constant data moving around. And being able to centralize access control and authentication and privileges and things like that in the same way that you would for an editor logging into multiple different administration UIs, and using their same credentials each time. If you've got that friction there for a developer, whoever's having to go and figure out how to do that authentication and on all the different APIs and how to connect all those individual things together, it's not just friction, it's not just a slowdown, it's also that pressure to get it done is where mistakes can get made. So those are probably the two big ones, I think, and how you integrate, and then also just the prevalence of all of those services in a composable DXP needing to consider security holistically rather than at every single touch point.